Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out another of these brand new Mattel Strike Attack figures from the Dino Trackers line for, of course, the Jurassic World line, but this time we've got the Atrociraptor. Now, we have had quite a few Atrociraptors leading up to this point, but this is the first time we've seen an Atrociraptor with a pretty good, significantly different look. Well, not, I guess, super significantly, but this time we have an Atrociraptor that absolutely was not featured in any of the scenes in Jurassic World Dominion featuring an Atrociraptor, and in fact has never appeared in any film or show or anything from Jurassic World so far. Who knows if maybe that's something for the future. But we have an Atrociraptor that has quills, a very Jurassic Park 3-ish sort of Atrociraptor here, I guess you could say, because we have the quills like you see on the raptors in Jurassic Park 3, but we obviously have them on an Atrociraptor. Very interesting idea on the part of Mattel. I would say pretty creative to come up with something like that and just kind of, tug on our heartstrings a little bit in a way, I guess, because they know that there's so many people that love Jurassic Park 3's raptors. Maybe not so much Jurassic Park 3, but the raptors themselves. There are a lot of people that love those raptors, and they're like, well, what can we do to make our Atrociraptor a little bit different? Let's give it the Jurassic Park 3 quills. And I approve because I think it looks really cool. And on top of that, we've got a pretty neat looking jungle theme going on for this one as far as the tones of color. So I like that as well. As far as the packaging goes, it looks pretty much like your standard always does. Same deal again with the back, except we have a shot here of the Atrociraptor showing the action feature and some images down here of the other figures in this wave of strike attacks. So let's pop this out of the box and check it out. So here is our Strike Attack Atrociraptor, and it fell over. So straight away, we're not off to a good start. It does have a weird leaning issue going on. You can see it's leaning to its left. And I don't know if I can get the legs in a better position where it doesn't do that, because the feet look, pretty flat to the ground. They look like they're in the spot that they should be in. So it's a little wobbly right out of the box, but it does look pretty cool. Another one of those instances where I think it really could have looked pretty neat with the lighter green kind of running along the course of the tail, but at the same time it does look cool because it starts out primarily having that sort of lighter tone, and then we transition as we move along to that tone disappearing, and then the darker tone now has overtaken the body. So it does look pretty neat as far as that goes. I can definitely say, looking at this though, it's clearly a very retooled version of the mold used for the extreme damage Atrociraptor, and that's pretty obvious. And if we actually bring in that Atrociraptor, you'll be able to take notice to that a little bit better, I would think. Maybe that's actually the key to getting this one to stand a little better, is positioning. It's got like a really jerky, like you either got to go up there or you go to here. It doesn't want to sit in between. But you can see the feet are in the same positions, the legs in general are the same sculpt, the arms are the same sculpt, the tail mostly is the same sculpt, and it looks like even the head potentially would be the same sculpt with, again, some modifications, which we're going to take a look at here, again, with a closer look right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the Atrociraptor, you can see we actually have quite a bit of coloration here in the face. We've got this really nice light green for the majority of the face. You also have this darker tone that leads through the eye socket area, and then up into the palate. You can also see there are some areas of a white coloration here spotting behind the eye, and then you also have an alternate tone of color here, again that dark tone, like we see up there around the eye here on the lower jaw, and that leads down into the throat before disappearing, and then we transition to that darker green. So there's definitely a good bit going on as far as the coloration goes. On top of that, we actually have an orange eye, we have a slit-like pupil, and we have a dark green for the quills on the back of the neck, which that definitely helps for those to stand out in comparison to the lighter green of the primary body color. There's also kind of a glossy look to the coloration here, that darker tone in the face, which helps that as well to stand out and definitely shine. But the head sculpt looks really good from a detailing standpoint, although again, I think it's the same sculpt as far as the extreme damage version, but it does look really, really nice. And we do have an articulated jaw, of course. You can see that we have a nice realistic tone of color for the inside of the mouth, which does not run up there onto the top of the mouth, interestingly enough, because the Prestosuchus did have that coloration on the top of the mouth. The Atrociraptor does not. The teeth are all kind of sculpted and together. They're all kind of sculpted together. They don't look great, but they don't look terrible. They do have a decent paint job, a little sloppy on the lower jaw, but for the most part, they look okay. They're painted with kind of like an off-white bordering on sort of a yellowish tone, and the jaw works pretty decently. It closes very nicely, but it's very jerky, similar to the way that the legs were articulating. As you move down, you can obviously take notice to the fact that we do have articulation in the neck, but as you can see, it pops right back up because that's part of the action feature. But you also start to see that darker green beginning to stripe here along the course of the neck. The lighter tone really shows off how vibrant that scale detail is, I can say that. And then as we move down here into the body, you begin to have kind of like a big cluster of the different variations of greens, because we have the lighter greens and the darker greens kind of like moving back and forth and trading places here, just kind of overtaking the entire figure in this area. And you can see the arms are primarily the lighter green. I would actually say entirely the lighter green. Yes, there's definitely none of the darker green on the arms. We do have arm articulation again, forward and back, and out away from the body. The arms are definitely smoother as far as the articulation goes than the legs are. But as we continue to move along, you can again see that we have more of that lighter green, but it's starting to taper off and disappear. You can see it's diminishing as we move out. And once we get to the hip region, it's pretty much gone entirely as you move out the length of the figure. We do have the Jurassic Facts app code, which I might as well pull out right now for you guys to add that to your collection if you would like to. But as you move down here through the course of the leg, you can see that there is nothing else paint-wise going on. Definitely just the greenish tone, no nail paint or anything. Doesn't even look like we have a slight shine for the nails or anything either. But as you lead up here into the tail, we continue to have that look again with the, again, primary just the green coloration. I don't see a speckling or anything on this one like we do often see on Mattel figures. Nice curve to the tail though, which is a plus. One thing that is different on this one compared to the original sculpt of this, like the extreme damage version, is we have these very small ridges moving along the tail, and that is something that was not present on the original extreme damage version, where the sculpt again originates from. But you can see the opposing side looks pretty much the same. The eye paint is very nicely placed, so no sloppiness as far as that goes, which is a plus. And then everything else looks just again the same as you would expect it to, and also the same as the extreme damage version. And to show you that, if we bring the extreme damage version up here and you take a look at the head sculpts, you can see they definitely look the same, but obviously we have the addition of quills now on the back of the neck, so we've been retooled in that area. As we continue to move down the course of the figure, the rest of the body looks pretty much the same, except obviously we don't have those injuries like we have for the extreme damage version. You can see the arms are definitely the same sculpt. You can also see the legs are the same sculpt, absolutely the same sculpt, even the same positioning. You can even see the slight tilt in the ankle and everything, so there's no difference there. And if we look up here, you can see the tails are pretty darn similar, pretty much the same, except it's been retooled a little bit now again to have those kind of ridges there moving along the back of the tail. But outside of that, there's just some minor differences between the two that differentiate them, and then of course the paint scheme. And that's one thing, you'll often hear people say that Mattel's lazy when it comes to their figures because they release so many repeats, or actually I should say repaints, but repeats of the same sculpt. But if you think about it, I really disagree. Even though they do release a lot of repaints, which, what company doesn't do that, especially when it comes to the Jurassic line. We've had tons of repaints over the years, whether it was Kenner or Hasbro, it didn't really make a difference. They delivered lots of repaints, not near as many as Mattel, but you might look at that as a bad thing. I think that's a great thing because that has given us so many more figures to collect rather than just sitting there and waiting for the next new sculpt. They're at least giving us, alternate paint variants, which I love. But also I would say that another surefire sign that they're not lazy when it comes to their releases is the fact that you get very subtle differences. Like they could have easily just re-released this figure just the same as the extreme damage version, except maybe cover up the wounds and then give it this really cool paint scheme. And they didn't. They gave it the quills on the back of the neck. They gave it these ridges and everything here moving along the tail. Just little differences like that show you that Mattel is always trying to give you something different. And even if it looks like it's just a straight up repaint most times, sometimes there are little differences on the figures. Like if you look at the Zuniceratops, it had feathers and stuff. Like they don't need to do that stuff, but they do. And that's one thing that I really do love about Mattel, is the fact that they'll just create little tiny subtle differences between their figures just to make sure that you have something that's even a little bit different from the previous release. But this one obviously has a very different look compared to a previous Atrociraptor release with those really cool quills. Definitely a very cool figure, again, from Mattel. And again, I did go over the articulation a little bit with that closer look, but I didn't take a thorough look at it, I would say, as we have the articulation of the jaw, the articulation in the neck, which is part of the action feature of the arm, forward and back, and out away from the body. the legs forward and back, which they work pretty smoothly. They also come out away from the body and move in, and then the usual swivel tail, which is kind of useless. But on top of that, we have an action feature, which you can see. The action feature of this Atrociraptor is to headbang, because clearly he's like some sort of an 80s fan of punk rock, it looks like, with those quills, and now the fact that he's headbanging definitely shows that off, which I think is pretty neat. But of course, I think the goal here would be to have the mouth open, and now the Atrociraptor is attacking, even if the jaws don't snap. But I don't think we really need to do sizes or comparisons or anything, because if you are familiar with the original Extreme Damage Raptor, which I've already reviewed here on the channel, you can again see that they are pretty much the same thing. There's no real difference between these two as far as a size goes. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Dino Tracker Strike Attack Atrociraptor is really fun, and I actually quite like the fact that we have this new version with the really cool kind of jungle theme to it. I think the jungle theme, that jungle look with the beautiful greenish tones, looks absolutely phenomenal on this, and the fact that they've included the quills on it as well is a really cool touch on the part of Mattel, just giving it that kind of JP3 kind of feel, but again, obviously with an Atrociraptor rather than a Velociraptor. And we also have this super flashy appearance to it as far as the coloration goes. But the sculpt looks really good, really high quality as always, really vibrant when it comes to the detail. And I like the fact that they've given it a bit of a different look from your standard Atrociraptor figure, kind of thinking outside the box, coming up with something a little bit different, a little bit fresh, just to add some fun to this release over previous releases. And on top of that, we also have this really nice coloration for it, which I said earlier I think looks really nice. It would have been cool to see some of that light green lead out into the tail, but it's not the end of the world, because like I said, it starts out with that lighter tone primarily, ends with a darker tone primarily, so it does still have a really cool appearance to it without looking like, in my opinion anyway, a half-painted figure like you sometimes get. But, of course, there always could be improvements like nail paint and stuff like that, but that's just minor nitpicks at this point. On top of that, we have an action feature, not the best one in the world because there's no actual jaw-snapping motion or anything, but it is okay for what it is, I guess, something that kids could have fun with at the very least. And then you also have articulation on top of everything, which is always a plus. I love articulated figures, so articulation is definitely a really fun addition to any Mattel figure. So if you are interested in picking this up for yourself, I will include a link in the description to actually 2 links, because I will include a link on Big Bad Toy Store where you can purchase this figure individually, or you can actually purchase it in the entire group, the entire wave in one shot, which I believe is in and out of stock a lot. So just keep checking back. If you do want to grab the entire wave, keep checking back. It'll come back into stock probably at some point soon. But otherwise, you can purchase just this figure individually currently on Big Bad Toy Store. So check those links. Go grab this really cool Atrociraptor, and also like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.